Okay, let's talk about something that drives us all crazy. You know that feeling when a software update comes along and completely breaks an app you use every single day? Well, today we're going to dive into a totally different way of thinking about software releases. It's a method that actually puts users first, with the goal of ending those sudden, jarring changes for good.
We have all gotten that phone call, right? From a parent, a grandparent, a friend who is just completely lost because their banking app or their email suddenly looks totally different overnight. This quote really it perfectly captures that feeling of being dragged kind of kicking and screaming into a new version of something you didn't even ask for.
And look, it's not just our parents. It's you, fumbling around at midnight trying to find the alarm settings that have been moved. It's you, about to jump on a super important video call, and bam, a forced update starts, and you can't do anything about it. These are not just small annoyances, they're these moments of pure tech-induced rage that just mess up our day. So what's really cool is how we can reframe this problem. Instead of thinking of jerk as an insult, let's look at it through the lens of physics. You know, a jerk is a sudden change in acceleration. It's that lurch on the subway that makes you grab the poles so you don't fall over. Our technology is doing that exact same thing to us, its users.
And that brings us to the big question, right? If we know what the problem is, this technological jerk, then how do we fix it? How do we engineer a smoother, more stable, and, a more human-friendly experience for everybody?
Well, the answer is this idea called progressive delivery, and it's a huge shift in mindset. It's about moving away from those sudden, jerky updates. The goal here isn't just to build stuff faster, it's to build the right thing for the right users and, this is the key part, to release it at the right time for them.
Let's see how this is different from what we might already know. A lot of us are familiar with continuous delivery, right? That was all about speed. How fast can developers push out code? Progressive delivery is the evolution of that. It completely changes the focus from developer speed to user experience. The main goal isn't just shipping code faster anymore. It's about making sure users are ready for the change and that it actually has a positive impact. So the metric we care about is user happiness, not just deployment frequency.
So how does this actually work? Well, the whole philosophy is built on 4 key pillars that all work together. You can think of them as the building blocks for creating that smoother ride. They're called the 4 A's.
First up is abundance. If we're sticking with our physics metaphor, this is the potential energy of the whole system. It's all the raw power and all the resources we've got just waiting to be used.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that things like server space and computing power were super expensive and really limited. But today, thanks to the cloud, those things are abundant. We have a nearly endless supply, and that just fundamentally changes what's possible.
And you can see here the exact technologies that make this happen. Things like AWS give us basically infinite computing power whenever we need it. Container systems like Kubernetes let us run our applications literally anywhere. And of course, the huge universe of open source software gives teams all the building blocks they need to experiment without those old school constraints.
All right, pillar number 2, autonomy. So if abundance is the potential energy, autonomy is the force, the motion. It's all the individual teams actually pushing things forward. Autonomy is all about letting small teams work on their own. Think about it like this. You've got cars on a freeway versus cars on a train track. The freeway is way faster and way more flexible because every car can move independently. That's the idea here, letting teams build and innovate without waiting for everyone else.
And the tools that make this possible are things like microservices, which break big, clunky apps into tiny, independent parts. Standardized APIs act like a universal translator, letting all those different parts talk to each other. And of course, tools like Git let tons of developers work on the same code at the same time without stepping on each other's toes.
Okay, but a freeway full of independent cars would be total chaos if everyone was heading to a different city. And that brings us to our third pillar, alignment. This is the shared map, the frame of reference that makes sure all that independent motion has a purpose.
This part is so important. Alignment is what connects all that fast-moving, independent work back to a single goal. It's the system that makes sure every team, no matter how autonomous they are, is actually building something that solves a real user's problem.
So, how do we get everyone aligned? It all comes down to data. We listen to direct user feedback, we collect telemetry from the app to see how people are actually using it, and we set crystal clear business goals so everyone knows what done looks like.
And that brings us to the 4th and final pillar, automation. In our physics model, this is the shock absorber. It's the thing that smooths out all the bumps in the road and makes this whole system run reliably day in and day out.
Honestly, at the scale modern software operates, automation's not a nice-to-have, it's an absolute necessity. It takes care of all the boring, repetitive tasks, which means fewer human errors and more time for developers to focus on the creative stuff that actually provides value.
And we see automation everywhere in modern software development. Automated tests that check for bugs, pipelines that take code and deploy it to users safely, and monitoring systems that keep an eye on everything 24/7. So when you put these 4 A's together, abundance gives you the resources, autonomy gives you the speed, alignment gives you the direction, and automation gives you the stability, what you get is a really powerful framework. A framework that lets you do some incredibly smart and safe things when you release software. Let's look at a classic example.
This is called a canary test. It's named after the old canaries in a coal mine idea. Instead of that big bang, jerky release to everyone, you first release a new feature to a tiny group of real users. Then you watch everything like a hawk. Is the system okay? Are the users happy? If everything looks good, you gradually open it up to more and more people. But, and this is the magic part, if you see any problems, you hit the off switch. The change gets rolled back instantly, and 99.9% of users never even knew there was an issue. It's a perfect example of progressive delivery.
This quote from Charity Majors, who's a huge figure in this space, just nails the entire philosophy. You can have a system that is technically perfect, 99.999% uptime, what we call the nines, but if your users hate the experience you're giving them, none of that technical perfection matters. The focus has to be on people. And so that's the question I want to leave you with. Whether you build software, manage people who do, or you're just a user, it's worth asking, is the technology in your life creating a smooth ride, or is it just another jerk throwing you off balance? Thanks for tuning in to this explainer.